As a child, my parents would have large family gatherings, and there was drinking involved. We had a family member that spent the night and sexually assaulted me that evening in my home, in my bed. I was only 5 years old.
So I think that most survivors would tell you that sexual assault is an experience that is stigmatizing, and with it comes a great deal of shame and guilt. It's an assault on someone's soul and spirit and integrity.
When I told my side of the story, as I think I was probably 9 or 10 at the time, that's when I personally had a lot of issues. The attacker was a family member. He was sent to prison. It kind of split my family into two. I struggled because I no longer spent time with his wife or his children, who were very active presence in my life. And honestly, as trauma is concerned, that's where a lot of my trauma happened. One of the reasons I try to share my story so much is it wasn't the initial attack that really caused me personally a lot of trauma. It was the way my family handled it.
My name is Rachel Holman. I work at the Women's Center here in Marquette, and I'm the sexual assault therapist. So I think that a part of the goal of therapy would hopefully be to destigmatize, to lessen unnecessary feelings of shame and guilt, and to empower a survivor to feel as though they can continue on with their life and whatever goals they have set forward.
We as advocates hear a lot of violence and a lot of dangerous situations people are put in, but it's really rewarding to see our clients grow and change and become different than they ever thought they could be. I like to think, like, for our community, we really try to be there for not only primary victims, but also secondary victims, and supply the services in whatever area they need in their life. So it might not look like just counseling, but help with housing. We have a pantry service that we utilize for people that they can come in and receive food items. We really just try to meet their needs wherever they are.
My name's Andrea. I'm a secondary victim to a sexual assault. A family member of mine was abused by another family member of mine. It happened to my granddaughter, and we were out for a walk, and she told me that she was being touched by her dad. And, she was 11 at the time. When I first found out, I was shocked, of course, and I really didn't know what to do. I mean, you don't know what to do. You've never been in that situation. And I just knew that the abuser had to be reported. And so the first thing we did was we went back to the house and gathered our things and went right straight to the police. Unfortunately, the abuser is my son. And so, that was a little difficult to navigate, but I just knew that we had to turn him in.
The Women's Center we work with them. We don't control them. They're their own agency. From the first time it's reported, they try to dispatch an advocate to be there with the victim. They're there with them from the initial reporting, just as a emotional support. And then they're also able to offer counseling services. They can answer questions. Sometimes victims can't get through to talk to the prosecutor on a case or the police officer, and so they'll reach out to the Women's Center, and they're able to give them some answers because they're familiar with the system and they're familiar with how the cases are going. They might be able to even answer like, oh, that's a certain type of court here, you don't have to worry about it, things like that. They have staff that can offer counseling, both individual and group. And should we get a conviction prior to sentencing, they can work with that survivor on making a good impact statement, whether it's written or oral, so that the judge who's doing the sentencing has a full idea of what this crime has actually done to this person and what they have to live with now. Looking at offenders, people who molest children, I don't have compassion for them because I don't think most people would. But I do feel bad for their families. I do see their parents suffering knowing that their son is going to prison. And, it can be hard on that family, and I understand that. But it's important to understand that anybody could do this.
Every aspect of my life has been impacted by this experience. The way I look at people, the way I see people, what I wonder, when you meet somebody, you think it's been so prevalent and so many people have come forward, I often wonder, is that an abuser? Is that a victim? I mean, I question people all the time now. I never used to do that.
Sexual assault and violence is very predominant in our culture, and it's not discussed often. If we could break that stigma and allow those discussions to happen, it creates healing. It also creates boundaries that we're not going to accept it and hide it. The general population thinks survivors, there's something wrong with survivors, that we're not able to deal with life on an everyday basis, that we're fragile in some way, and the opposite is true. If someone's a survivor and they've gone through that trauma, they are strong and able to help others and discuss that trauma in a way that's good for not just other survivors, but society in general.
Because the more we realize it, the more we can destigmatize and talk about it and bring awareness, then hopefully the more prevention. I do think that education and prevention is what we need as a community and as a society in general, to keep everyone safe.
The Women's Center empowers survivors by helping them find their voice again, by helping them feel safe in situations that they didn't feel safe in the past. They bring their own power back, but we help them find that power and that strength within them.
If you've experienced sexual violence, if you know someone who has, the very first thing you should do is call the police. It needs to be reported because it needs to be investigated. And the longer you take to report it, the harder it is to investigate. But you're going to have our office on your side. You're going to have a prosecutor working to prosecute the case. You're going to have the Women's Center there to support you. You're going to have the police agency, whether it's a detective or a patrolman that investigated your case. They're still there. They're out working the case when we need them to get more evidence, do more investigation. It's a team effort to try to make sure that justice is done for you.
People who haven't stepped forward and are afraid to talk or call the police or tell their family members, they're not alone. That's the number one thing. People have to understand they're not alone. There are individuals and there are support organizations that are there to help. It's just about speaking out and taking those steps.
If you're a victim of sexual assault, please reach out. It's absolutely vital to you to reach out as a victim. And as a secondary victim, which would be somebody who probably is there for the victim, reach out for help, because it's not something that can be done on your own. There are people who have been trained to deal with these circumstances, and they can give you the tools that can help you get through it.